Welcome to Chapter 3. We talked about how to work with culverts in Chapter 1 and introduced the idea of vertical control. Vertical control slows powerful water by using a scour pool and also by armoring splash zones and banks. In Chapter 2, we talked about control of grade or slope of the streambed using one-rock dams. Here in Chapter 3, we'll show you how we built a drop structure called the Zuni bowl. We'll also talk about how structures can fail, why they fail, and how to repair them. Yes, failure is real and preventing it is ideal, but you know the drill. We built the Zuni bowl in the log drops in a section of our streambed that had been significantly channelized or downcut. These downcuts are also called incisions. The aerial image shows the streambed with the Zuni bowl labeled. Steep downcutting, beginning with the Zuni bowl, is in the area with lots of trees. Notice the trees follow the arc of the streambed. Finally, Gary is walking alongside the stream channel that will open out into a broad, shallow area, called a swale. We think that the trees provided shade for cattle for a very long time, and their trailing created the incision. No trees, no shade, no grouping, no downcutting. Riparian areas, like this streambed, have very high ecological value, so managing cattle in them makes a significant improvement or prevents a problem. Here you can see the former levels of the stream, marked by the stains left on the rock where the soil used to be. These stain marks provide evidence of downcutting and channel formation and provide a history of sequential erosion. We think that's pretty cool. Our goal is to return the streambed to its original level. To do that, we need to address the vertical drop caused by a head cut just upstream from here. We'll do that with a Zuni bowl. Here's the sequence of work when we built the original Zuni bowl in 2016. We began by examining the eroding area so we can design a structure that will stop the upcutting in the channel and begin the healing process. The Zuni bowl, built out of local rock, will look like a big opened-out horseshoe. At the top center is the headcut channel that is gradually eroding upstream. This is the active cause of the incision. Note the green button bush growing over the channel. You'll be able to use it to orient yourself as the work progresses. We did some pruning back of the shrub and carved out the bowl shape with pick and shovel. Then, rock placement began. Note how once again there's a splash apron to reduce scour at the lower end of the bowl. Note also the big rocks in the upper center forming the pour-over lip and the big rocks in the lower center forming the floor. These are strong enough to withstand the force of the water and prevent scouring. Over the next 3 months, the project area received 16 inches of rain, and you can see how water has been slowed and has settled below the Zuni bowl. This gave it time to soak into the soil and banks. As the water receded, the sediment that was trapped provided a rich planting bed for riparian plants. A year later, after a total rainfall season of over 30 inches, here's what the area looks like. Plants have taken root and grown, and the banks are not nearly as steep because we've raised the bed of the stream. It looks great, but trouble has already begun. We'll examine that and try to fix what's gone wrong. Neil is comparing a photo of the completed 2016 Zuni bowl with the way it looked 2 years later. There have been a few problems. It looks as if these were caused by some building mistakes. A too high rock in the center that caused water to be directed sideways instead of pouring over the center of the bowl. Inadequate tying in of rocks on one bank allowed soil to erode, and smaller rock and fine road base have washed out as a result, and the original headcut has moved upstream.
When it pours over, it hits the ground really hard. That creates a scouring effect, a scour pool. That scours underneath the pour over. And that mobilizes a bunch of sediment as well as deepens the drop. So it creates kind of a positive feedback loop in that it increases the intensity and energy of the water to propagate the actual head cut up the system. When the water pours off of the edge over the pour over, not only does it have the energy when it hits the ground, it also creates a suction that is pulling the materials off of that pour over lip. So it's pulling away at the top and sucking stuff off as well as scouring out the bottom. So it's got 2 points where it's really working that head cut up the channel. That creates an incision, a vertically unstable location in the channel that's moving. That's dropping the channel, that's lowering the water table. It's making it narrower, which means that the water in it is deeper and more likely to erode. Also, since it's lower and in less contact with vegetation and soil, it's less likely to soak in, so you're losing water storage capacity throughout the whole system as the head cut migrates up the system. It also makes it tougher for vegetation to get in there, tougher to access. It makes everything more difficult from an ecological as well as a management perspective. It looks to me like that's part of what happened, is there's this rock in the center here that is sticking up a bit. And that divided the flow, and it forced some of it into here, and it got somewhat channelized. Also, it looks to me like some piping happened underneath, and that water came out these two holes. You can't see them from everywhere, but if you come close, you'll see there's these holes in between this corner rock where it looked like sediment poured out and got sucked out. And again, that it's not just that it's being pushed out from behind. When you have a pour over, it creates a suction force and it's pulling things out. So they really have to be jammed in well if you want them to stay in a structure like this.
The objective is to fill any holes and get the water back over the pour-over. We want the water to flow over the armored structures we've created. What it's done is it's both flanked it and undercut it and pulled material out so it's going through it. And that's allowed the headcut to propagate up the channel again a bit. We want to fill all the space in here, as well as fill any of the cut that's moved up the channel, and we can fill a lot of it with the finer material and gravels and small rock, as long as there's big rocks that are holding all that back.
What do you guys think that we would do to repair this? Well, one, is it necessary to repair it? And two, if we were to repair it, what would we do? Why do we want to repair it? Right, we want to establish vertical stability. We put a lot of energy into this, doing that, and if the headcut migrates away, we got to build another one of these somewhere else. What do you see as some things that we can do to repair it? It's worth paying extra attention and diligence to filling all the space you can, right? That's one of the things we're doing, is we're just filling all the spaces. Make sure there's no space for water to flow through when we're armoring something. We want it to pour over the pour over. So we will have to basically pull out this whole section here and pack it full. We're going to take some of that road base, which will pack hopefully a little bit better than the material that you had, and basically pack it all the way full and rebuild this section. If we don't have to move this one, I'm not attached to moving it. It's got that high point, but if we can build at that same elevation across and tie into the bank, then it won't force water around that high point. We could even taper up from that to meet the slope over here, which will push water into our pour over. The edges are the more likely points of failure often on these things. So again, push the water towards the designed pour over. That's going to be a benefit. We do wings. You want to raise an elevation out into the banks and have these big anchors, these big footers stabilizing them. And that way, if water does come out in an event, it's still being focused into the pour over because the wings go up and slope. So they push the water back in. So everything's geared to push the water into the plunge pool and then move downstream from there. We can fill it with fine stuff because it's got these big rocks here at the bottom to hold that stuff in, as long as we plug those holes, and the fine stuff just can't pour out of those, right? So that's the balance. If we can get those holes plugged really well, we can fill it with fines behind it, and the big stuff will hold that stuff there. All this is very site specific. Right. Like we're building this to fit specifically the shape that we're seeing here, or we're reshaping this and then building it to fit that shape.
That concludes Chapter 3. We talked about down-cut or incised channels, head cuts and their repair, some common mistakes and why they occur, as well as how to fix them. Please see the references posted below this video. Chapter 4 will explain a bit about another vertical control or drop structure, the long drop. Chapter 4 will autoplay, or you can bail out now and watch it or any of the other chapters on your own schedule.